The garbage man pulled up and dumped off the dumpster. And we had to start all over.
Oh, God.
Well, can we kind of share this, I guess?
Yeah.
All right. Well, first, can you just start off by just telling us your name and a little information?
Yeah, my name is Tom Pangburn. I was born in January 12, 1925. Lived here in Jeffersonville all my life. I've moved around town a little bit, but this is my home, and I love it.
All right. And before we start asking questions, I was going to ask you one thing. If you could, have one picture or one memory of what the Great Depression would be, what one image would come to mind?
Well, I thought at the time that we were poor. We lived approximately half a mile from here, right straight down. I had an older brother, a younger brother, and an older sister, and we lived in 4 rooms and no indoor plumbing. At that time, I didn't think much about it, but after I grew a little older, that really affected me, to have to live like that. I mean, it's what you call poor. But I think the thing that I remember most was that the cooperation people did. You didn't have welfare, for example, but everybody shared. When you sat down to eat, you were given so much food, and you don't eat any more than that because you had to share that with a neighbor. And this is what impressed me. That's why Tom Brokaw called us the greatest generation. We did it.
Yeah. And then, when did you first experience the effects of the Depression?
Well, I wasn't when the stock market crashed in '29. I was 5 years old, but I was around adults so much, and to hear those guys talking about what was happening, I was absorbing all of that at that young age, and to go to the cabinet to make a sandwich and there's no bread. You didn't have any. It was so bad that when you left school, they gave every student a loaf of bread to take home. And of a morning, before class started, everybody got a little bottle of milk and a graham cracker, because that was most kids didn't have anything. I was one.
Wow.
A lady said to me a couple of weeks ago, "Your brother wore the same sweater all the way through high school." I said, "That's the only one he had." And that's fact. Once a year, the organizations such as the Rotary Club, the Elks, they would come in and pick a class out of school, all the schools in town, and we'd go over here to the Quartermaster Depot, which was still operating, and have a big banquet, and we'd get to eat all the food we wanted. And that was, I always say, I didn't know you had 3 meals a day till I went in the Army, and I didn't. We didn't eat 3 meals a day. My dad used to say, if you all want to eat tonight, you go steal it. And we did. We stole to eat.
Wow.
That was a fact. But say we stole it, we went to the farms, the farmers knew it, they helped out a lot. But it was tough.
How did you feel about stealing the food?
Well, I say steal it. This was all farmland down this expressway coming through here now, 10th Street. That wasn't there. That was all farmland. And you could just go in there and pick some potatoes and tomatoes. I think we felt we were stealing it and sneak it, but they knew we were doing it. And it was never a problem if anybody ever, we didn't go into grocery stores and things and do that, but you had to do what you had to do. Down on downtown area here, once every day at noon, they'd open a soup kitchen. They'd set out tables on the sidewalks. They got that down there now. But I lined up many a time just to get a bowl of soup, not because I was hungry, I guess, but because it was free. That's the way it was.
All right. And then how old did you say you were when this all took place?
When the stock market crashed, I was 5.
You were 5. Okay.
But you grew up real quick. You really grew up quick. I can remember when I was maybe 14. There was no money in our home. There was not enough food. And I got a job a guy said I could get a job if I wanted it. And we drove from here to Elizabethtown, Kentucky, and dug sewers with a shovel. And leave at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, I was only 10 or 12 years old, but they didn't worry about the age. If you could work, they'd hire you if they needed you. And I can remember I dug the hole so deep I couldn't throw the dirt out anymore, and they fired me. So I worked myself out of a job. But those are just some of the things that we did. And one of the things that stuck in my life really sticks with me now. I was in the 7th grade. I was 13, and it came time, lunchtime. I had no lunch, and I had no money, and I lived too far away to walk home. And even if I went home, there's no food there.
Yeah.
I'm 13, think about that.
Yeah.
And I made up my mind right then, if I'm going to make it, I got to do it myself. So that Saturday, I knocked on every door in this end of town, and I got 2 jobs taking out ashes out of a furnace and throwing them in the alley, $1 a piece, and that took care of my lunch.
Wow.
And I've been doing that the rest of my life. I've been taking care of myself since I was 13, and it taught me a good lesson. I can do it, and I will.
How did that make you? I mean, how did that make you feel? With yourself, with the other kids.
Well, there were a lot of other kids like me.
Yeah.
And there were some families that their dad had jobs. My dad had 2 jobs, and never saw him. But you could work 45 hours a week, and you may bring home $20.
Mm-hmm.
That was the problem, and that doesn't do much. I had an inferiority complex up to a certain point, and then it dawned on me, well, they can't do what I'm doing. I'm doing this, and I have a fear of having that happen to me again. For example, I swore I'd never let that happen to my children, and I've worked very hard to make sure that didn't. But I always got that fear. I've been selling for 40 years. That maybe I'll lose my touch, maybe I can't sell anymore, maybe I'll lose my home. That's always there, because there were so many people that lost their homes.
Yeah.
They did. The biggest problem that was going on in the Depression was the agriculture. The farmers just could not get any money for the food they were growing, and they were borrowing from the banks.
Right.
It got to the point they couldn't make the payments. The banks were foreclosing, and they had all these farms all over the United States. What are they going to do with them? The banks went broke.
Mm-hmm.
And when the banks crashed, that was the end of it. It was a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. People just could not pay their bills.
Yeah.
And I can remember, I remember one meal that we sat down, and my dad said, Mom had made a big pot of soup, and God, I loved it. But she says you get 1 bowl apiece, because Bill needs some help. Now, Bill was our neighbor.
Okay.
And I sat there and ate that stuff. Well, I'd give anything for just 1 more bowl of that soup, but you don't get it.
Wow.
And this is discipline.
Yeah.
And it stuck with me. I'm an ultra-conservative because I've seen what politics and other things involved. There was a lot of graft, a lot of gambling, a lot of everything going on. And you're raised in that atmosphere, you learn real quick, but you pay a price. And I think I spoke to the master's class at U of L, and one of the questions they asked me was, what makes you think your generation was more prominent than, say, ours? And I said to them, when I was 5, the market crashed, we were hungry. Then I'm 12, my house had 4 feet of water in it. I'm 18, I'm laying in a foxhole overseas with somebody shooting at me. And all you people worry about is what you're going to pay for your Nikes. And that's the way it was. So you can't compare them. One of the great things that came out of the Depression, and people talk today about good times. They don't know what good times were. After the war, you could get a job anywhere. I went to work at Colgate when I was 15. and worked night work and went to school during the day. And I came back, I went back to Colgate, and I was making 49 cents an hour, but we were saving a little bit of money because there was no inflation. I remember I tried to buy a car a year and a half to put you on the list because this country was converting over to the civilian market versus the wartime. It took time. But everybody was coming home from the war, they were getting married, they were starting a family, buying a home, all the good things. Just a wonderful time in your life. Wonderful time. Somewhere there's a picture of your mother and Kevin standing at the kitchen sink drying dishes at Christmas time. I've never been able to find that picture, but it was a story that of people starting out their lives. We had the two children, Kevin and your mother, and it was just a good time. You could buy a house for $500.
Wow.
You could buy a car for $600, and we did that. And those were the good times. But it started back disciplining you as during the Depression. You have nothing. Are we ever going to have anything? If you wanted to go somewhere, you had to walk, or you rode a bicycle, and because there was no cars, because people couldn't afford them, and plus they weren't making them. And if they made them, they couldn't sell them.
Right.
That was during the Depression. I can remember my dad bought a Model T, and he had it about a month, and they repossessed it. Came out in the driveway and pulled it away. And that wasn't uncommon, because people did not have the money.
Yeah.
I know now, and I'm sure your mothers did the same thing. I need 5, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you get it. I never in my whole life did I get a penny from my parents. Never. Not a nickel.
Yeah,
Nothing.
work for it.
You have to go out and do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Every Saturday, I spent Saturdays during the Depression cutting grass. You got 50 cents a yard. You rake it, you got another quarter. But that's 75 cents. And that'll buy you lunch for 3 or 4 days, because during the Depression, hamburgers were a nickel, Cokes were a nickel, you could ride a bus for a dime. All those things went on, and you just did not realize then what was happening to you. You knew you were poor, nothing you could do about it. I can remember going to school with a pair of corduroy pants on somebody gave me, and the sole of my shoe was coming off. When I walked, it sounded like a band, you know, flapping and rubbing. But everybody was poor that I knew. I mean, all my friends were.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something that we overcame it.
And just real quick, you know, back, you know, in school, in grade school, like what do you remember, like mostly, like what type of games did you play, like on?
Well, you know, that was always the fun part of growing up. You didn't have Little League, which I think is the worst thing that ever happened to these young kids. We would get together on a Saturday morning. Every Saturday, this was called Port Fulton, right here, Port Fulton, named after Fulton, I guess. And I lived over on that other side, that was Ingramville. And every Friday we would get together and set up a softball game. And we'd go over here to one of the playgrounds and we'd play all day long and really play hard.
Yeah.
And we'd play, sometimes we'd play fox and hound when I was 8, 9 years old. And we'd play till 10, 11 o'clock at night, hiding out in people's yards. Nobody ever bothered us.
Yeah.
You never did anything bad. And it was a good time to grow up. And those things, I think, that's why you didn't see any fat boys or fat girls. They just did not. You got plenty of exercise, and there was no on Saturday, on Sundays, the grown-ups would get together and play cards all day, and the kids would play in the yard, and it was just a good time. But you always had to invite somebody that had a bat, and then you had to find a guy that had a ball, and then you had to go get this turkey couldn't play with Dan, but he had a glove. So we'd get them all together, and we'd play that way. But it was, you couldn't afford to buy those things. I had I had broken my leg when I was in the 5th grade playing ball. And every afternoon after school, my teacher would come to my house for 2 hours and tutor me. You don't see that today.
No.
You don't do it. They do not. I talked with her approximately 3 years ago, that school teacher.
Yeah.
And I was going to take her to dinner, and a week later she died.
Wow.
But she was somebody that that impressed me very, very much. My principal during the high school days, the kids all had ego problems because they were poor, and he kept that up. He made you feel important. He gave you things that made you feel good, chores and chairmans and things like that.
Yeah.
And that isn't going on today. I don't think it is. Maybe it is. I don't know it.
Right.
But that made me a better person. I think it did. I look at some of the kids today, everything you mentioned, for example, Jeffersonville High School, what do you think about? Basketball. You know, why don't think about academics? They don't do that.
Yeah.
It's not, it may be important, and there's some intelligent kids come out there and do all right, but what about the guy that's struggling?
Yeah.
Where is he today? And I think about that's the way we were. I went all the way through high school. I'll say this publicly, and never owned a book, and came out there with an 89% average. Bluffed my way.
Yeah.
Terrible. Sad. Sad situation.
Did you see the number of students drop?
Pardon me?
Did you see the number of students drop dramatically during the Depression?
I can't hear you.
Did you see the number of students drop dramatically during the Depression?
The students?
Yeah, attendance.
Oh no. School was the center of everything. Everything was a school, because without that, you just flaunt yourself. But we only had the one high school, and it was downtown, and they had all the satellite grade schools, and then we had one junior high, just one. I think Jeff probably now has 4 or 5. New Albany has 3 or 4. But everywhere I went to, that right there on Meigs Avenue, that little building crossing the courthouse, that was the junior high school. But the kids all went to school because that was a diversion, really. I used to get away from this. Get away from 4 people sleeping in the same room. My brother, 2 brothers and I slept in the same bed. And my grandpa slept over in the corner because grandpas didn't go to nursing homes. He took care of grandpa. Mind you that.
Yeah.
But the idea was that you took care of the family. That was family first. But the family, I don't ever remember sitting down as a family and eating a meal. Very rare. You go in and you get eat and get out and go to work, no matter how old you are.
Did you save, when you worked, what did you do mostly with your income? Did you share it with your family members? Or?
Well, I tell you a funny story. When I went in the military, I made $21 a month. That was a private's pay. And I sent home an $18.75 bond every month for almost 3 years. My 2 older brothers did the same thing. When we got back, those bonds were gone. My mother cashed them in each time she got them to keep going.
Wow.
And we never questioned that. I had a car. I bought me a Model A, paid $60 for it. I went in the military. I've never seen that car since. Because she was trying to raise my 3 sisters. And we never questioned that. But in reality, I got $2.25 a month. But I was over in those islands. What am I going to spend it on? There's no place to spend it. All you got is jungles, and I never had an occasion to need any money. But when I worked, make $1 or something a week. Once in a while, I remember the insurance agent came by once. He wanted to collect 75 cents for the life insurance on somebody. Mom didn't have it, and I gave her 50 cents. I mean, those things you did. But as far as my dad or my mother saying, here's your lunch money, you want your lunch money, you go get it yourself. And that's where they had to be. Now, there's some kids that that their dads worked, or maybe there was one. There were 6 in my family, not all during the Depression, but most of the time, and that's a hard chore to go through that.
Yeah.
But we all turned out good. I felt we've all got our own homes and got our own families and got good jobs, and I think that's a tribute to that generation. I keep talking about that generation because we accomplished a whole lot, a whole lot. I still have a lot of hate in me over the war, the Japanese. I still hate them. I get talked to about that quite often, but I'll never get it out of me because of the things I've seen, and I just don't. I just don't think they're human.
Just kind of jump back just a minute before we get, that's a whole other subject we can talk about. Like when you were growing up, what about the type of clothes that you wore? Like what, I mean, some people wore feed sacks and things like that, you know. How did that have an effect on you?
All of them hand-me-downs.
Yeah.
I can remember when I graduated from school, I got from grade school, I got a coat and a new pair of pants, but that was it.
Yeah.
I just don't know where the clothes came from. I guess a lot of times the neighbors would come around and say, see if this will fit Tom, or see if that'll fit Bill, and if it does, you can have it. And then we'd do likewise. I'm sure my mother did, but that's where the clothes came from. You just didn't buy them.
Yeah.
I don't ever remember buying them. I got a job in a hamburger place downtown here, and when I was a sophomore, and the guy said, you start to work tonight and wear a white shirt. I didn't have a white shirt. White shirts cost 45 cents, and so I had to delay my start of employment till I could get 45 cents together to buy the white shirt. And I only had one, and I'd work that night and come home and I'd wash it out myself and wear it the next night. And that's how the clothes were. But we were always clean, but you just didn't have good clothes.
And then just going back to the stock market, did you family invest in any of the stock markets?
No.
Didn't involve with any of that?
We had a, if you go out 10th Street, where Youngstown is, first house behind Youngstown, that's where I was born and raised. Little 4-room shingle house that we threatened to burn down, but my mother lived there till she died. She wouldn't move. I went over to fix a window, and I was driving the nail and knocked the plaster off inside. It was that bad.
Wow.
But we were all raised in that house, and no plumbing. But you know, it's you get up of a morning, and my grandfather lived there. And if he got up, you got breakfast. If he didn't, you went on to school without breakfast, and that wasn't uncommon. You go to school without anything to eat, and then what are you going to do at noon? This is where you learn to be self-sufficient, and I think it just made me a better person.
Speaking of houses, were there any like Hoovervilles, like I guess it was the shady towns, like where people actually lived in boxes and?
Well, there of course, though, I think there's, right now, I actually believe there's more homeless than there were back then.
Yeah.
Because people had a sense, I'll use the word, sense of pride. They did the best they could. I go to McDonald's every morning. If I'm not there by 8:15, they call. Get down here. But every morning, and you sit there, and these guys come out from under that 65 overpass. They've been sleeping there all night. They're there every morning. The lady comes in, buys their breakfast. She takes money from the church. At noon, they go over here to the soup kitchen and eat. So all they got to worry about is one meal a day.
Yeah.
And that's a habit with them, and they'll never get away from it. I think that, and this is a cruel thing to say, I starve them till they learn.
Yeah.
And yet they walk in there, and they got signs, help wanted.
Yeah.
They don't want to work.
Yeah.
But it wasn't true back then. We were willing to work. And my dad and others, they were willing to do the job, but where are you going to find it?
Right.
My dad used to build outside toilets. That was his job with the WPA, the Work Progress Administration. and they had the PWA, the Public Works Administration. And these were nothing more than the government, Roosevelt stepping in and saying, I'll create jobs. They had a thing called the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, where young men could join that. It was like the military, and you'd have a place to live and feed you, clothe you, and you worked. But there was the old Jeffersonville Field House down here, you know where that is?
Mm-hmm.
That was built with WPA money. They didn't need that. We had 400 students in the whole school and building a 4,000-seat gymnasium. Crazy.
Wow.
But they had to get these men to work.
Yeah.
And that was built in 1937. Just during the flood, they had to stop work on that while the flood went down. But those things, the American Legion, the Rotary Club, all those organizations, without them, I don't think people would survive, because they were constantly stepping in to help by having dinners and giving out clothes and whatever they could do. But it was a self-help time, and you learn from it.
And just one more thing. How were like holidays spent? You know, like say Christmas. You know, do you remember like any certain gifts that you got that really stood out, or you know anything? You know, I mean, not different from now.
We can talk about that, and this may sound predictable. Last Christmas, I remember when I was little, we hung tin cans for ornaments. We punched holes in them, tied. That was it. You couldn't buy ornaments. We got little gifts, maybe I don't even remember ever getting gifts at Christmas time, because they never were significant enough to impress me.
Yeah.
And one year I got a bicycle. They took turns. My older brother got something, then me, and it went on down the line. But if you were on the bottom, you had to wait 8 years. But I got that bicycle, and I remember I rode it over through here. And I got caught in 14 inches of snow moved in. That was the biggest snow we had in a long time. But the gift and Christmas time, the tree was always there. You know, you knew you weren't going to get any gifts. Why worry about it?
Yeah.
And I don't today. I wish they could get away from all of that. I sweat out. I don't remember birthdays anymore. I don't remember anniversary. I just don't do it, because I think it's foolishness. You got to go through. Barbara just had a birthday, and you got Easter, then you had Valentine's Day. Hell, I can't keep up with all that. I'll give them, here's $50, buy yourself each time, and don't bother me.
Get you something real nice. You know, and then getting, you know, during the Depression, you know, did you see anybody, you know, lose so much money, you know, like committed suicide or jump out of windows, or you know, extreme?
That happened mostly on a national level. There weren't many people around here that invested in the stock market that I knew. I sell stocks now, and I'm afraid I'm going to get shot the way that market is dropping. But the guys that invested their whole inventory, everything in the stock market, when it crashed, there was a lot of suicide. I can remember seeing newspapers that show a guy on the ledge getting ready to jump, and it did. It happened. And but Hoover was president when the market crashed, and he used to say, and I can remember listening to this. Now, we had no television, but you listened to the radio if you had a radio. He talked about no one will ever go hungry. Well, they did, and that's when he lost the election. Roosevelt stepped in there and made all these promises, which he kept. First thing he did was he had what they call the NRA. Everybody had a car had an NRA sticker on it. That's the National Recovery Act, and he initiated that to jumpstart the economy. It took a lot of time to do it, but he kept his promises to create jobs and get this economy moving. I don't know what would have happened to this country if the war hadn't broken out, because that broke it. This place right down below us, it ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But up to that point, they talked about maybe that war was created to break the economy, but I don't believe that. I think the Japanese and
Yeah.
the Germans were, we had to step in or we'd have been overran. But the economy, Roosevelt bought it out of it. I thought Roosevelt was king because he was there all the time I was growing up. He was
Yeah.
always the president. He's the last one that had 3 terms, 12 years. And he was still been there. He hadn't died. Then Mr. Truman came in and
Yeah.
took over.
Um, you know, and then and getting back to that, you through the depression, and then you kind of work yourself back up, and then the flood came.
Mhm.
I get was that 30?
Oh yeah, we had to leave town.
Yeah, 37.
37.
37.
Yeah, and that.
How, building back. You start out with nothing, you try and build back up, and then the flood comes.
Well, we weren't building ourselves back up. We were still trying to get
Yeah.
on our feet, but the flood came around January of 37, and it rained so many times, every day and every night, and I can remember going down to the river, and you could see houses floating down through the river, coming from up north. But when I was 12 years old, I remember standing at the corner of Meigs and 10th Street. There was a grocery store, and it's a strange thing, and I often think about this. My mom never said, "You be home by 9, you be home by 10. They didn't know when I left, and they didn't know when I came back. But I always came back.
Yeah.
But the point was, I was in that store, and the sirens went off, and that meant the levee had broken. The levee was these little hills you see along, that the water was coming into the town and get out. And the National Guard came in there and said, "Empty the store within 15 minutes. Grab everything you can and run."
Yeah.
And I went to the candy spot. I was the only kid in there. But I jumped on the side of a army truck, and the water on 10th Street was up on the tires. And I went out home, and my uncle was there from Indianapolis, and we all dashed out here to by Vissing's Dodge. You know where that is? That overpass. Well, we went there and got in boats, and they rode over, and we got on that train, and the water was up on the train wheels. That's how high it was. And we went to Indianapolis, and we stayed up there for almost 2 weeks until they got everything down back here. But my grandfather had died during the flood, but you couldn't get back into this town unless you had a pass, because there was so much disease. There were dead animals and a little bit of everything.
All right. Well, can we just pause
Yeah.
first? It's a 60-minute tape. We're just going to switch it back over.
That was a good part, too.
Yeah, I know. Shoot.
Okay.
But anyhow, when you come back home, and here's your house with mud up to the windows all the way around, and everything gone, all your furniture's gone, and that's a lifetime of accumulation. When you left here to get out of town, you didn't take anything with you, and it was another time you start all over again, and then you get that settled, then the war breaks out. And I remember enlistments, we tried to enlist. So many people were trying to get into the military because we were brainwashed. The government had taught us how to hate, and they taught us well, because I can really hate. But they got so heavy they couldn't handle all the enlistment, so you had to wait. I'm going to hold this picture up here, and if you can zoom in on this. This is a class in the early 40s at Jeff High School, and they had called us out of class because each person that had turned 18, they had that birth date at the school, and the military had said, "Bring them down." So we all went out of that class right during class and went down to the gym. We had no idea what was going on. Got on school buses and went down to be drafted. And we stepped out on the steps, and they took this picture. And this picture is so significant to me because it's an era of a lot of things it speaks of. First of all, we had just came out of the Depression and out of the flood era, And there's no fat boys on this picture. There's 75 of us in there. I don't think there's a 200-pounder in this class. I won't name these guys, but I'm sure if I did, you'd know a lot of them. We had what they call physical ed classes in high school, and you did exercises. You didn't go out and play goof around. We rode our bicycles to school. We walked. We did a lot of dancing at night, if you get a girl to dance with you. But the point was that this shows the significance of the Depression. We did not have a McDonald's. The only way you could get a hamburger is go in the bar. And we didn't eat a lot of those because they cost a nickel. Most of us didn't have a nickel. If you look also in this picture, each boy in there has creased trousers. He has a clean shirt. He has a neat haircut. No one told us we had to do that. It was just discipline on our part, and we had learned a lot of that discipline from growing up during the Depression. 6 months after this picture was taken, we were all overseas, all of us, and that's how your life changed so dramatically and so quickly. But I keep this picture over my desk as a reminder of a lot of things that could have gone wrong. I don't know. I haven't counted these pictures. I think there's 5 in this class that never came back. They were killed. And when you're a senior in high school and you look out and here they're bringing back guys that have graduated 2 years early, they've been killed, and you face that reality. This is another time in my life I better get serious, and we did. But this is a picture. I met 5 of these guys overseas when I was there. One quick story, I got caught in an air raid, and I jumped on the side of a Jeep in an old on Guadalcanal, old dirt and muddy road, and I told the guy, take me up to the airfield. And he said, I got to get to my unit, get off. I put a gun on him, and he was my classmate. Looked at me, there were 2 guys that run around together in high school over in some dump someplace, and there were 4 others over there. But that's a little war story which we won't get into. But the thing that does say to you, why weren't these kids 200 and 300 pounders like these? I think Jeff High football team this year had 3 300-pounders on it. Where those guys come from? How'd they get that way? I don't know.
Yeah, they had plenty of cheeseburgers.
I weighed 128 pounds when I went in.
Yeah.
I weighed 132 when I came out.
Wow.
So I got cut off over there for a while.
Yeah.
But the point was that the Army, I loved it. I might have been the only one, but the guys that went through the Depression, we loved that Army food. Especially when they let us sit down 3 times a day.
What did your family think when you went in?
When I went to the military?
Yeah, when you went to the military.
Well, I had an older brother.
Yeah.
He went in ahead of me. He was in what they call the finance department. He took care of payrolls. I think the farthest he got was Alaska. I went in second. I went overseas immediately. Then I had a younger brother. He went in the Navy. And it was funny, I was on, they had just retaken the Philippine Islands. And your dad was over there later on.
Yeah.
But I was writing to my brother. Of course, they censored your mail so heavy you couldn't even give a hint of where you were. If they did, they cut it out. And I found out when I got back, my brother and I were within 20 miles of one another. He was out in the harbor unloading troops, and I was already in. So we talk about that quite often. We all came back. I tell you a quick story. There's a guy in this town that I knew real well. I won't mention his name. And I was on Guadalcanal with him, and we were getting ready to ship out. When you get ready to move out, you don't know whether you're going to be dead the next day or whatever. And he said to me, I had dog tags, never had dog tags. He said, put some tape on those dog tags. I could hear you walking up here. And I thought, well, I know as much about this war as he does. I wouldn't tape him.
Yeah.
I was in the Philippines, and I sent back into an era to bring out some stragglers, some Japanese that wouldn't surrender. And there's a lot of to tell you the whole story sometime, but anyhow, they were over a little ridge, and they wouldn't come out of there, and they were shooting at us. So I told the guy with me, hold him down, and I'm crawling around on my belly, and would drop a grenade in, and I heard a dog tag, and I would die right here. I wish I'd have listened to you. So I went down and took my shoestrings out and tied them in a knot, and then put those grenades in. And I drove purposely down to Macon, Georgia, about 6 months ago, and met with him and told him that story.
Wow.
Joe has 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars. He was the only guy I knew that loved to kill. He loved it.
Yeah.
Give me a jab and I'm happy.
Yeah.
But he's quite a guy. I called him 2 weeks ago when they're supposed to come up here and do a story on WW2 with me,
Yeah.
and I asked him to sit in with me, and he said he can't. He's bedfast now.
Yeah.
But he was quite a guy, and you see these fellas all the time. That I can remember I came home and went to a dance, and one of the guys that I knew real well, he's sitting at our table at this dance, and I said to him, "How come you're not dancing? You know you didn't have a leg.
Oh wow.
You know, what do you say next?"
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's another story, and sometime maybe we'll talk about it. I never talked about all this up until the last year.
Wow.
But that all coincides, the depression and the flood and then the war, and you say, what in the world's going on with us?
Yeah.
During the Depression, were there a lot of leisure activities? Like, for example, like going to the movies or
One of the best things they did during the Depression, that if you go downtown here, there's a place called the Play Square, and they had all kinds of softball leagues. And you go down there on a Friday or Saturday night, there'd be 2,000 or 3,000 people. You know where that is? It's right down here at the end of this street. If you go all the way through, as far as you can go, you'll run right into that Play Square. And I pitched for a team in one of the leagues, and it was the only thing you look forward to.
Yeah.
We put a team together. They bring in the world champion softball team down here, maybe 5,000 people.
Wow.
No seats.
Yeah.
You stood up.
Stand up.
And all down through the alley, people opened up the garages, they'd sell candy and hot dogs and things. It was a good time. But we played a lot of ball, a lot of softball. The principal I had, which I guess the guy had the biggest influence in my life, I can remember he knew that I was having trouble, and this boy, that I won't mention names, this guy was quite an athlete, and he called us both into his office, and he said to us, they're bringing in this kid out of reform school. This boy had been in trouble, and they were releasing him, and he was coming to our school, and he said, he'll be here Monday, and you guys are going to be his best friend. If you don't, I'm going to knock the hell out of both of you.
Wow.
And he meant it.
Yeah.
He meant it. And when this kid came in, we made sure he was on every ball team we played. Not that we were scared, but the guy made us feel important.
Yeah.
See, and that was so important to people. A lot of kids, I can remember seeing young girls just sit in school and cry. The boys never did. You better not cry.
Yeah.
The girl did. And I think that every once in a while I'll be in a restaurant or someplace and somebody will come up. Remember me? Yeah, and we'll sit down and we'll hash all that out. All of that out. The fact that you had nothing, and then all at once you got the opportunity to buy anything you want. Go for it. This is the 5th house I've had.
Wow. Yeah.
and the one we had in New Albany, I finally paid it all.
Yeah.
But you still have that fear that they called it terror then, as a terrible thing, that you were going to fail. And I used to wake up at night and think, I had 6 children, and they were all in private school. Now think about that. Tuition?
A lot of money.
That's why I have all this gray hair.
All the stress.
But I felt that I was going to give my kids the best they could possibly give them, and I worked my butt off to do it. I worked day and night, and sometimes I look back now and I think I made a mistake. I should have done this. I should have.
Yeah.
But how can you say that when you don't know?
Yep.
If my son walked in here right now, he and I'd get into it in 5 minutes because his liberal attitude versus my, I can't cut that.
Yep.
And but the kids all turned out well, but you still have that. I'd wake up in the middle of the night sometime and I think, golly, what if I don't know how to sell tomorrow? What if this guy won't talk to me?
Yeah.
And what if I have to find another job? All these things scare you because you know what's going to happen. Am I going to go back to the way I was raised, back in the Depression type? Never happened, but the fear is always there. It's there now. It's still there. Thinking that I'm 76 years old, I got a 30-year mortgage. Somebody's going to get stuck. Good. But I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
and I never have been. I always have a regret. I don't get to see my grandkids as often as I should, but these are the times when I was little. During that time, families got together. They got together every weekend. My cousins, all of us, we get together, and I don't see that anymore. At Christmas time, somebody never shows up. I got this new house up there, and I got a deck on the back of it that you won't believe. And when I get moved in, I'm going to send out not invitations but demands. You show up.
Yep.
And everybody's going to come to my house. It may be the first time in all these years. It doesn't happen. Matt's busy with his school and everything, and Brent's running, and I just think sometimes, God, I'd like to get everybody down like we used to when I was little. My son that was just here, he wants me to have a family reunion. I said I wouldn't dare get them all together. You have to wait till some of them get released.
During the Depression, were there days...
I'm listening.
Okay. Were there days that it was so bad that you couldn't find a job, or that you were just so hungry that you just wanted to give up?
Well, I never wanted to give up because at my age I didn't know what give up meant. I thought this is the way life is. You actually felt this is the way you're supposed to live. You're supposed to be like this. Look around at some of these foreign countries right now. Those people are living like we did then, and they don't know any better. They don't care. But I've been at times when I wish I'd have had a new shirt. I wish I look a little bit better. I had a girlfriend, and I had to pick her up on my handlebars on my bicycle, and that's the best I could do. I didn't keep her very long. But I never felt like giving up at no time. I don't think that my brothers and I sit around and talk about this quite often. All the standards and things my parents stood for, and there was a lot of bad things they stood for. I felt none of that came to us. We formed our own values, and they were good values, and we've lived with them. But I never felt like giving up. I was get scared sometimes, but when I'd get hungry, there wasn't. During school, we would, at lunchtime, we'd go through the neighborhood and find an apple tree or something, get some apples. That was lunch. And you know, nobody ever said, get out of my yard, leave my apple. Don't say that. There's a lady that I've been having coffee with at McDonald's for 5 years. She comes in every morning, ugliest person you ever seen. And we got to talking, and I said to her one day, what was your maiden name? And she told me, and she lived right in my neighborhood. I didn't recognize her, and we used to steal her apples. And she said, you were the one. So, but we talk about that quite a bit, how poor we were, but that was, you could walk right out here in this field and get you some tomatoes. You could pull some green beans and take them home. My aunt would come to my house because we lived what we called country. This was country. And they'd go out and pick greens, whatever that is, kale, whatever you call it. They'd spend the whole afternoon gathering that stuff, and then they'd divide it up, and then they'd cook it 2 or 3 days the next week. But we never were, I was in times when I was hungry for good food, but I always knew where to go get something to eat. And I used to go down there and stand in that soup line down there because it was quite a big deal. And the guy used to say to us, throw another dog in that kettle. They used to make us believe they were cooking an animal. But we ate it anyhow.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the problems that happened during the Depression, why did it happen?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, and I can hear, we had a little garage in the back of our house. It was really a shed, and a lot of farmland around us. And when it would rain, those farmers would come over and get in our shed till the rain stopped. And that was the highlight of my life, to sit back there and listen to those guys talk.
Yeah.
And they blamed a lot of it on immigration. In other words, those damn Irish are coming in here, and here come the Czechoslovakians, and they blamed everybody for the Depression. Run them out. You hear that now.
Yeah.
But I never did believe that when I'm listening to them. But that was one of the things they thought. And the labor unions were not, at that time, what could they do? A company didn't have any money. You could demand all you want.
Yeah.
There used to be a place, it's a spook place down on Spring Street now. They have Halloween, and that was an old shirt factory back during the Depression. And nobody worked in there but ladies. And they went on a strike. I used to go down there because, boy, they would fight and use clubs. It was terrible, fighting for their jobs. And they didn't fool around. Later on, when I came back from the military, I went back to work at Colgate. I worked there for 15 years, and I resigned and went in my own. But the point was, I did labor negotiations, and I could see the effects of labor unions good in middle time. If there's good times, like now, labor union can't force a company because they just move somewhere else. In bad times, they can't give anything to the union because they don't have it. So only in the sub-economy is the labor union good. But I did a lot of labor union work. I helped organize the ICI bag plant up here, the ammunition plant, and I was going to do that full time, but I had to travel, and I wouldn't do that. But the labor unions, they really had some battles back in there. John L. Lewis, and I don't know if you ever heard him or not, but he organized the coal mines, and he was a hard-nosed guy, but he did a lot for the miners. And now you got politics in those mines, and the inspectors are paid off, and you have a lot of men killed in those mines because of the safety conditions. But the unions were quite active back in the Depression years, but they finally just faded out. What can you strike for? They're laying off on their jobs.
And then you talked about, did you say that the Jeff Field House, that was the WPA built that? I mean, were there any other, what other?
Oh, they did a lot of building of dams, built a lot of street repairs. They built courthouses, everything they didn't need. They just gave you a job. I can remember seeing guys standing on one side throwing dirt over on the other side of the truck. This guy's throwing it back. They do that for 8 hours for 20 cents an hour. But they used to say the WPA was we pedal around, and that was about what it was. But nobody made fun of them. They had jobs, and they were willing to work, and it was menial jobs. This is menial as you can get. But to bring home something to buy, the bakeries around here, they would give a lot of bread away. As I told you earlier, when we left school twice a week, we each took home a loaf of bread. And that was all some people had, and they knew that. And then the dairies would come in maybe once a week, and you'd bring home a little plastic carton of milk. It didn't mean much, but you took it home, put it in your coffee maybe, I don't know, but there was a lot of sharing. I like to see that get back to that era again, but you never will see it because people are greedy, politics are dirty, but to share with your neighbor, that's what it was like. And if you didn't do that, you didn't make it. I remember one time in my whole life, we had an old truck, and Dad took us all down to the ice cream shop. And he turned around and he said, "You get one dip. Anybody orders two, I'm going to throw them out of the truck. One dip."
Wow.
And we went in and got that ice cream, come back and sat in the back of that truck and ate it. And it was so good. But you know, you didn't go to the refrigerator and get an ice cream cone or get yogurt, and it didn't have it. And right up here across from Youngstown, there's a little strip mall there. After the flood, people started coming back, but they couldn't get in their homes. They put tents all up through that area. I got a book here I'll give you all before you leave. It's got a picture of it. Just tents, a little wooden floor, a stove, and a bed. And people would build little grocery stores all around that. You know, that's what people were. And you could buy milk and candy and bread and that type of thing. And that went on for maybe 6 or 7 months till people got their houses cleaned up and then moved back in again. And then, of course, again, you get that straightened up, and then the war hit. So it was all a three-pronged cycle there in our lives that I don't think a lot of people could have withstood. I really believe that. But we were geared for it. We took it, and we came out ahead.
Wow.
When did you first realize the ending of the Depression?
That it was a depression?
No, when did you first realize the Depression was ending?
Well, it was still going on when I went into the military. In other words, I say it was going on. We were coming out of it, but when I was 16, 17 years old, I went to work. People were wanting to hire you primarily because everybody was in the military. They couldn't get help. These factories, this Jeff Boat ran on with women. They did the welding. They did it all.
Yeah.
And they took the song Rosie the Riveter. That's what happened. Colgate was hiring me at age 15. That's against the law now, but they had to do it. But I realized then things were going to go. I got a paycheck every week, and I kept it hid in a cigar box under my house. I had a little hole because I knew if I brought out something, my mom get a hold of it. I don't see it anymore. I'd give her a little bit. It worked in reverse, but when I came back from the military, those were the best times in my life. They really were good times. We'd come home and my wife would say, "Betty and Bob bought a new house this morning. They want us to come up tonight." That was a big deal. So we'd go up to their house. It'd be a little old 2-bedroom. First house I bought, I paid $7,500, brand new. 2 bedrooms and all. I lived in it. It was so bad back then as far as getting homes that the FHA wouldn't let me have that house until the grass grew. I mean, that was crazy, but that was the law. So we moved in. And I lived in that house for about, I guess 6 or 7 months. I didn't make any payments because the loan had gone through. But the bag plant here was still hiring people, this ammunition plant. And my wife wanted to move back in town. She's an in-town woman. And I sold that house for $10,000. I made $2,500 on that. And I was only making $3,000 a year at Colgate. It was a lesson. I mean, this is what I've done here. I've bought 3 of these houses in the last 5 years, picked them and sold them. I made a little bit of bundle money on this house until I found my taxes and I lost. Then. But the point is that the Depression was still going on when I went in the military, but it was easing up, primarily because of the war effort. They were building the ammunition up here, they're building tanks, and they couldn't get help. And that's why things started straightening around a little bit, but it ran this country in debt so bad. And that's it. Well, I don't think we're out of it yet. I keep thinking that. I don't know. They say all this surplus. You know, you say you're going to buy a $20,000 car, and you go to pick it up, and you say, well, I think I'll buy a $15,000 car. And you go home and tell your wife, I just saved $10,000. That's what the government does. We save 10. You don't have it. And this is what's happening. But that's another story. But the Depression started easing, I think, probably in 40, 41, when they were going into the war effort. People were making a little bit of money. I can remember guys get off to school at 3 o'clock, go and work up that ammo plant at 4 and work till midnight, come back to school. We went to school on Saturdays because of the guys trying to make a living.
Wow.
And we went to school on Saturdays, And it was another thing that I remember in the Depression. If you were married and the wife tried to get a job, nobody hire her, because nobody in the family should have 2 people working. I remember the school system was the first one that did it. They'd fire you if your husband worked. You work or he works, you don't both work. And the single women, they were in an uproar with the single women. Don't you hire that married woman.
Yeah.
She's got a husband. And let her stay home. And that was a big issue, especially in the school system. They were the first ones to enforce it. And I remember I had an aunt or some relation. She was married, but she used her maiden name and caught her. I always wanted to tell on her.
Did you believe those rules were right? Did you believe like women shouldn't have worked if their husbands had a job?
Well, I kind of think at that time I believed that, yes, because this is not a if you two people in a family working. Here's a guy over here with several children can't get a job. Why not? You share everything else. You share your food. You share your clothing. You do everything's together. I was always as I grew older, I used to think, damn, that was socialism, you know, but it was survival. But no, I didn't think a whole lot about it then, but when I got out of the military and got to looking back and doing some reading on it, I felt it was the thing to do, try to share the job market. And I couldn't tell who all was doing it. If a guy had a job and a steady job, that gentleman, I'll assure you, he was sharing it. I promise you he was. And this is the way we were when we sat down to eat. You were rationed your food because neighbors needed help, and nothing wrong with that. Because without that, there's no survival. None at all. You know, I think back to, for example, the Philippine Islands. I've seen those little kids running around over there. We'd scrape our canteens and things into the garbage can. They'd stand there and scoop it out and take it home. And that's about where we were. And I could relate to that. But I don't know if it was right or wrong, but I don't know how many companies enforced that law. I do know the school system did it. And I can remember some of the single women picketing certain plants because you hired a wife. You know that. No.
How did you feel about women and maybe their children working in the factories?
Well, I don't, my parents never said anything to me about working. I think they appreciated it. And anytime you can make any money, what's wrong with it? I don't think there was child labor problems. I didn't see it. First job I had when I went to Colgate, they had soap about that big square. It was called Optican. And that was military soap. That's why I got a job. They were making soap for the military. And I had to pick that stuff up and pack it all night long. From 3 to 11 I worked. And it was hard. But I was so grateful to know that I'm going to get $10 or $15 on Friday that I just couldn't wait. And I don't think I can remember. I think there's more child labor problems today than there were then. I believe that. I think some of these, especially foreign countries, and some here in this country. I think Kathy Lee Gifford just went through that. She represented that company that was using child labor. Of course, you don't know that, maybe not. I don't like her, but I think that had nothing to do with it. But the point is, I think it's gone right today. They're using some of these illegal immigrants and paying them very little wages and giving them a place to live. And but back then, I was all for child labor. Give me a job, let me work. And as I say again, when I was, I got something important to say.
Yeah. That camera's still rolling, so now we gotta double up.
Oh yeah, that's both sides of me. Okay. Out of all the jobs you had, were any of the jobs bad working conditions?
Oh yeah, Colgate. Yeah, they had no union there at the time I went there, and I say bad working conditions. It was you stood there for 8 hours and you didn't get 10-minute breaks and you didn't get smoking breaks. You worked, and I take come home. I would walk from Colgate, you know where that is, all the way home up here at 11 o'clock at night, and every night. And then I got up and went to school. Now the school, I tell you how it was in the Depression at school. They had one of the things that the government or the school system, I don't know who did it, but they would give a poor family a job. I had a job, paid me $4 a month, $1 a week, but that's a lot of money. That's hard to say that, but it was. And what I'd do is during the physical education, I'd give them points, or the instructor would, and then at the end of the day, I'd add all those points up. And didn't have calculators or any of those things. You did it just in your head. And that I did that. My brother did it. My younger brother did it. We all three had jobs at school that paid us $4 a month. And that was a help to us. You know, you could, at lunchtime, you could buy a bowl of chili for a dime, Coke for a nickel, and a hamburger for a nickel. 20 cents. Quarter, you could have a good dinner. But you didn't have a quarter. And that's hard to understand for people who think you didn't have a quarter, you didn't have a quarter. And you went out that weekend and you know you're not going to get it from your dad or your mom. If you want that quarter, you better work for it. And that's what we did. Hell, I used to go out and knock on doors all the time. Cut your grass, clean out your gutters. And I'm 12, 13 years old, 10. And I learned at 13, and I've been taking care of myself ever since then. Ever since then. I never questioned where my war bonds went. I imagined, I often wondered how my mom cashed them in because they were in my name. But we never questioned. She lived to be 94 and was a tough old cuss. She was tough. You know, in those days, when you get ready to do the washing, you heat the water out in the backyard in a wash tub and carried it up to the wash. That was our job. But I never heard her complain. People didn't complain. That's what amazed me. My mother never heard her complain. To raise us like that and go through what she did and never complain. Now you hear women complain all the time.
Yeah.
Bitching always. But it's something that you think about and think, what a wonderful thing. No complaints.
Did you have to miss school sometimes because of work? Maybe because you came home so late, or? No,
I tell you what. I broke my leg. I missed a week of school, and that's all I missed in my 12 years.
Wow.
Wow. I would have went all the way through if I had to. I love school. That was a safe haven for you. You're with other people that understand you, and you're with teachers that you can relate to. And I remember a teacher said to me one time, she leaned over and she called me, "You're number one in the class." And I thought, boy, I said, "What'd I do?" She said, "You got the dirtiest neck." Ruined my whole week. I'd been playing football at noon.
Yeah.
But the teachers were so good. I never missed school. I used to play a little trick down there. I had a science teacher that was gung-ho. Each school had a chairman of selling war bonds and stamps. That was for the war effort. They did that to funnel money into the government. Well, I'd get paid on Friday, and I'd go to school Monday, and I'd buy $5 worth of war stamps from her. And she'd just praise me, but I'd buy them, and I'd go down to the post office and cash them in. And she never knew that. She thought she gave me good grades. I passed. The teachers back then, too, all teachers had part-time jobs if they could find them. They all worked mail carriers. Most of the teachers I remember were mail carriers during the summer months, and they all had to make extra money. But they did it. One of the things they promoted, and maybe you've seen this in movies and stuff, they promoted apple selling. Sell apples. And there was everybody that could get the apples to set up a stand on a corner, and you could buy an apple for a nickel. But that was part of Hoover did that, of trying to pull the economy out, selling apples. And there used to be, I never read the paper a lot of times at that age, but you could see pictures of guys selling apples. And I don't know how they made it, but the farmers were the ones that really got beat up bad. This, right down here where Youngstown is, that was all farmland. All the way up to where Jerry's is, all up through there, that was all grape arbors and potato patch, tomatoes. And he would get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and load that truck up and take it over to Louisville to the farmer's market and sell his stuff. And sometimes he would hire one of us to go help him. And we'd get up 2 o'clock in the morning and go out there and fill those bushel baskets full of tomatoes and corn and whatever, and go over there and sit with him. He sold. I slept. But the point was that you did anything you could to make a dollar, to make a nickel, because you didn't have it. My son would come in now and say, "Dad, you give me $20 to Friday, I'll do it." I wouldn't dare do that when I was young. You just didn't ask for it. It wasn't there, and you knew it. And you learn your parents didn't have any money, don't ask. And you don't.
Did your mother have many jobs during the Depression?
Never worked. Well, till after we were all out of the house, and she went to work for the school system in the cafeteria. She retired from there. She died about 2 years ago, I guess it was. She was 94 years old. And but she was just a joy. She never complained. She loved her beer. And my sisters and I'd take her out to American Legion on Friday, and she'd drink a few beers. And she had 2 or 3 heart attacks, but even then, the last heart attack she had, she was in intensive care, and my brothers and sisters and I went out to her house, and we threw all her furniture away, bought all new stuff, put new carpet and everything, and it ruined her life. Come home and she threw a fit. Want that old furniture back. We just couldn't pick it up, fall apart. She had her bed sitting on concrete blocks. I mean, we didn't know that.
Yeah.
But that was her lifestyle, and that was her home, and we had to respect that. And we did until she died right in that living room. But she never went to work till after everybody was out, and then she got a job, and I think just has something to do. But during the growing up time, she never worked. She was always home, always home. We had a car for a short time. Even Dad walked to work. He worked for the railroad part-time, and then he'd get laid off and worked for the quartermaster part-time, then get laid off. And that's the way it was with people. You couldn't hold a job. And you could buy stuff if you had the money to buy it. Especially farm stuff. Those farmers, I used to feel real sorry for them. There's, I think you're going to see that again. You're seeing the big corporations buying up all this farmland all over the country. I got a fella went to school with. He had a big Jersey dairy farm right up here off the Utica Pike. 1,000 acres, I guess, that family had, and they raised milk cows all their lives, made a good living. Now he can't sell it because of competition with the big corporations that own these dairy. Undercut him. He just sold off $1 million worth of ground up there. They're building subdivisions. I don't blame him. You know, get rid of it. What are you going to do with it? But it's sort of scary when you think about it. One of these days in your lifetime, you're going to be at the mercy of these people, and they're going to dictate what you pay for your food.
When your father was laid off, has there ever been days that he was so disappointed with himself because he couldn't find a job?
No, never did. I never was disappointed, and because that was the norm. There were guys. Well, when he get laid off, he would go over to quartermaster. That was the war years were coming up, and he would bid on that lumber they had over there, and he'd haul all over in our backyard, and we would pull the nails out of it, and he'd resell it and make a few bucks. We had hogs, chickens. Oh yeah, not a lot, but they'd butcher once a year, and we had so damn many chickens. I don't like chicken anymore, but we'd kill those chickens regularly every weekend and have fried chicken. And the families would all come out. They would come to our house, or we'd go down to their house, and they'd kill a bunch of chickens, and out in the backyard they'd fry them in a big kettle, and golly, they were good. It was really good. But no, I never did get disappointed, because he might have been doing better than the next guy. But they tried. That was the thing. You had to keep at it. And I can think of this one boy said to me, "Why don't you come on over to the house and have lunch with me during school, and we want to work some lessons together." So I did, and it was so good I went back every day. And finally the dad said, "Hey, that's it. The grocery bill's too high. I lost my meal." But I went out and found something else, and that's what you had to do. You know, when you look at 10, 11, 12-year-old kids trying to help out, it was something to think about. This made you a better person, a lot better person.
I mean, that's pretty much what we had. Were there any other things that you wanted to talk about? Any certain anything?
I don't know what else I could talk about. I appreciate you all coming up here. I enjoy talking about this. It's something I've never done in my life. I've never talked about the war, talk about the flood, talk about the Depression. Just never did. Your mother and they never heard us talk about it. But it is something I think that people need to know about. And this is the thing, these are the things that Tom Brokaw talked about in his book. He would pick an individual like me or somebody, and he would research and go through everything you went through, and he would put that story in that book. And unless you went through it, you wouldn't appreciate the stories. He had a lot of war stories in there, but he had a lot of Depression stories, and he called that book The Greatest Generation. There'll never be one like it, never. And I keep saying that because I believe it. But I thank you all for coming up. If you have any more questions, I'll elaborate. I was looking at some notes here.
Well, one thing real quick, do you have any investments in the stock market now?
Yeah. I have what I do here, as you know, Phil's my son, he had an accident, he's head injured. And I retired 3 times, and I keep going back to work because I love it. I love what I'm doing. And I made so much money I was getting in trouble with the government. So I told them to take 20% of everything I make and put it into an investment. I told the company I work for. And they said, you want security or I said, I want high risk. And that thing is making so much money I can't. and I got it, so I set it up with an agreement that I could never get it.
Yeah.
It's going to your mother and me and Mary Beth are administrators of my estate. And but I've got to sit down with them and let them know about this. But that thing is really going crazy. But
wow.
It could be tomorrow they may notify me you're broke.
Yeah.
But you know that I don't need it. So let's play with it.
A little extra.
I sell stock through Standard & Poor, which is a conservative investment type thing, and it has a 3% guarantee to it, and it sells good with that guarantee. But I wouldn't be scared to invest in it. You can't. When I set up a stock, I set it up on a long-range basis, 9 years. You buy stock from me, you have to keep it for 9 years without a penalty, because it's not a stock market is a long-term basis, long-term. And my people are making money.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that's the only stock I've got. I think if I was young, such as you people, I'd get into real estate so quick it makes you dizzy. Oh, big time money in it.
Yeah.
You know, you buy a house like this, 70,000.
Yep.
You put 20,000 into it, you sell it for 115.
Yep.
Big time. Is that thing running?
Oh yeah.
I had a house over on Court Avenue. I paid $55,000 for it. I put $18,000 into it. I sold it for $96,000 for cash.
Jeez.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's just a good business if you got the backing, and I did that without any money. I borrowed, and this house needs a lot of work done to it. But if you walk in through there, that's a new bathroom, new bedroom. We're sitting here before I decided to sell it. I kind of like the old place.
Yeah.
I thought I might stay here. Put some hardwood floors out there, tear out this little washroom here and laundry room, and open it all up, and put an apartment upstairs. You got a side end. I've been thinking about all these things. I thought, no, I think I'll just buy a new one.
That only helps us with the landscaping.
Well, yeah. Oh, you all did the landscaping. You all did the landscaping where I bought.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, that's what impressed me. I didn't know you did it.
Yeah.
But I walked up there and I was amazed how nice that was.
Yeah.
Brent put the lights in,
Yeah.
and but I'm supposed to be out here the first of the month. I'm paying rent now. But this couple that bought this house, they spent 10 minutes in this house. That's all. He's a school teacher. She's with a mortgage company. And I wasn't going to let them in. They were 2 hours late showing up. I'm a nut about that. But I said, look, let's walk through. They walked through it. They aren't even married yet. Left, and 2 weeks later she called me and said, I want to make an offer on that house. You got to be kidding. This guy doesn't know a hammer from a saw. I don't know what he's going to do, because I can do a lot of things, but it still has a lot of potential. This house was built back in 1936. I just found a door down there in the basement. I didn't know it was there. I'm scared to open it.
Oh, wow.
But I found out it doesn't have any hinges on it.
Uh-oh.
It's nailed. It's weird.
Some secret passage or something.
Well, it's there. You can go down there and see it.
Wow.
And then another lady called me. She went through here and she'd never seen a coal bin. You know, you had right outside the house, there's a big thing you open up and you shovel the coal in, and then you shovel the coal into the furnace. Everybody had coal furnaces. Now it's gas. But she brought her kids up here and she wanted to see the coal bin. And we went down and showed the coal bin. But there's a lot of money in property. If you get into it, you can make some money with it.
Yeah.
I bought that old house I had on Maple Street. That house had 5 bedrooms, a den, a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen, and they were all octagon. And I loved that house. Man, it was a dandy. And I'm sitting on the porch, and the guy walked by and said, what do you want for this house? And I told him, he said, stop down to my office tomorrow and I'll pay you. And he did.
Wow.
That one over there on Court Avenue, I was driving a for sale sign in that
Yeah.
thing, and this guy pulls up and said, "Can you show me through the house?" I said, "Nobody in there, go on through, look at it." He came out and he said, "What do you want for it?" I had no idea, so I thought, well, I'll just stick her up there good and high and then we'll bargain.
Yeah.
And I told him he gives me a cashier's check for it. Bought it right
Lord.
there. Bought it for his son.
Right.
But it's a lot of fun. It
Yeah.
is. I enjoy selling and
Yeah.
doing all this stuff. And
Yeah.
But real estate, you go down there on Court Avenue across from the courthouse, all those houses, back in, right after the military or after the war, you could bought those houses for $400 or $500 a piece. I bought one around on Locust Street. I paid $6,000 for it.
Yeah.
And then decided to move to New Albany and built that house down there. I sold it for $6,000. 2 years later, the telephone company bought it and paid the man $60,000 for it. And then tore it down.
Yeah.
So this is what you get into if you want to invest in something. That's the route.
Yeah. And I guess that's all the questions we had. Was there anything else you wanted to put
No,
in
that's all. One of the things you asked me about was some of the Tennessee Valley Authority.
Yeah.
That was all created back then. TBA, and those are things that. But a lot of times they'd come along and tear up a road, a street like this one, and then another crew come on and put it back. I mean, that's a big job.
Yeah.
But you know, you say, what would they tearing that street up for? I think it looks good. Make a job.
Make a job.
And that again is I guess you would say that. I say this without any reservations. All that we went through, I've never taken a nickel from the government. Never. No wealth, nothing. Don't want it. I retired 13 years ago. Started drawing Social Security. I said to the government, I don't want Medicare. I got my own hospitalization. I'll take care of myself. The company I retired from called me and said, well, see, when you go to a hospital or use Medicare, they pay first, and then your other insurance. So when I didn't take it, that meant they had to pay first. And they said, you either take it, or we'll take it for you and take it out of your pension. So I had to take it.
Yeah.
But I've always been, I don't want the government giving me anything. I want to sit back and cuss them. I'm not indebted to them.
Yeah.
I don't want to be. I draw Social Security and that's it. And enjoy life.
There you go. Well, I appreciate it. I think that ends everything. We got everything we wanted.
Well, I hope the call comes out the way you want it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sometime maybe we'll talk again.
Oh, definitely.
We ought to get Brent's mother to give you that tape I got on the Truman years.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's really good.
They've edited that thing. I don't know what they cut out of it, but they sent me a letter. They put it in the Truman Library. And you could go there if you want to hear about when they dropped the atom bomb. You can punch that in, and that tape comes up, and you can listen to what I had to say about it. It's all on there.
Yeah. It's interesting.
A good tape. But hey, I haven't heard from them. They're supposed to came down here a couple of weeks ago and did a tape on the South Pacific. But I haven't heard from them. I didn't make any invasions, and I think that bothered them. They wanted somebody that went in.
Yeah.
I went in afterwards.
Yeah.
But it was still a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I like to talk about it.
Wow. Well, hopefully for Dr. Crothers gives us another report on World War.
Who?
Our professor at IUS.
Cutter, is that his name?
Crothers.
Crothers. Really?
Yeah.
Well, I hope he likes it too. And,
Yeah.
I've talked to several of the schools on this
Yeah.
and World War II and different aspects back. And I don't think that, I remember this guy in Macon, Georgia that I called him to come up and sit with me on this, and he told me he couldn't. He just got all kinds of physical problems. But he said, you keep talking. Tell them about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to do. Get somebody to listen to you talk about it. And that's what we do. And I just started doing that. And as you notice, I love to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about it.
Yeah.
How's old Brent getting along?
He's doing pretty good.
Barbara went to,
Hold on, let me turn all this
okay.
equipment off now. All right.
Yeah, I'm going to start cussing any minute.
All right.
Barbara went over to Hyatt yesterday to wedding reception,
Yeah.
and Brent was the DJ.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
This kid from Providence named, I don't know what his name was, married this girl. So she said there were a lot of Providence people over there.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to school?
Jeff High.
Did you?
Oh man.
Oh wait, how do you do this? Alright.
Hold on, actually, before we turn it off, I want to stand up because I want to get a picture of us three. Because when I
Okay.
do that, I think that'd be pretty cool. Hold on, just go stand by him right now just so I can get the angle.
Oh, I can go stand.
Alright, hold on just a second.
You're almost tall as I am. What are you, 5'10"?
5'8".
5'8", aren't you really? I'm 6 feet, and you look like you're taller than that. What's your dad do? You transfer him here?
No, actually he's a retired Air Force.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
And we've been living here for, in that one house on Cherokee, I think about for 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, this is wrong. I just wanted to get a picture of it. Yeah, alright. There we go. Alright, that's it.
Unknown this, I'd brush my teeth.